thank you for joining me and African Pilots on your stand here at Kigali. You are the author of the report on the African market. Maybe tell me some more about it.
In June this year, we published a connectivity report focused on Africa. And what we wanted to do was to look at the status of the African market, where are the opportunities for airlines to open new routes, and essentially to develop connectivity. And the report is structured around two parts. We have a first section where we look at point-to-point routes, so new markets which can be opened. And then a second part where we look at developing hubs.
So what informed your study or your reports on what the potential of those new markets could be?
In the first section where we look at new routes, what we did is, first of all, it's important to understand that when you open a new route, you're going to stimulate the market. So the first step for us was to analyze the data from the last 10 years and come up with what we call a stimulation curve. So this is a curve which allows airlines to estimate by how much passengers or demand is going to grow once you open a new route. So basically we looked at data over the last 10 years, what were the routes which have been opened and by how much demand got multiplied once opening a new route. So with this stimulation curve once in place, we looked at O&D markets nowadays which are not served with a direct route. And we identified 45 markets in Africa which would have sufficient demand once opened to sustain at least 2 weekly flights with a 70 to 80 seater market.
Okay, and then that obviously informs information in terms of what kind of airplane they need in line with what Embraer has available.
Exactly. So one of the key challenges, or what's really important when you open a new route, is to do this at a low risk, because you never know how this is going to turn out. Are you actually going to be able to fill a plane? And it's easier, obviously, to fill a smaller plane than a bigger plane. A smaller plane has a lower trip cost than a bigger narrow body. So this is where small narrow body aircraft, such as the E-Jets family, which is a family of aircraft going from 70 seats up to 150 seats. This is where these aircraft are handy for airlines because they're great for opening new routes. As I said, low trip cost, lower risk, but also they're great aircraft for developing hubs. Developing connectivity is not just about opening new routes, but it's also about making hubs more efficient. And the best way to measure the efficiency of a hub is looking at how many daily frequencies you have to a given destination. Ideally, a hub should have 2 to 3 daily flights per destination, and this allows passengers to connect efficiently in the hub. And what we're seeing in Africa is that few airlines, I will not name them, so they're in the report.
Yeah.
The audience can check the report, but very few hubs in Africa have this optimum number of banks in the hub.
And in your report, you obviously looked at the growing passenger demand. So you said you looked at the last 10 years and the forecast going forward. What are the numbers that you were kind of estimating from a growth perspective, and which were the biggest areas?
So what we're seeing in terms of areas, we're seeing there's a big potential in West Africa. So this is more the Francophone Africa. The number one route, for example, is between Cameroon and Ivory Coast. These are two big countries of West Africa, but there is no non-stop direct flight. There are many routes, as I said, in West Africa. Some of them, another example is, for example, Cape Town to Lagos, two big cities, no direct flight. So many routes, and what we're seeing in terms of demand growth over the next years is we're forecasting a growth of around 4 to 5% in Africa, and this is higher than other regions such as Africa. So we really see a big potential, And this growth is mostly driven by new routes being opened, but also the middle class in Africa is increasing. There's a lot of first flyers, people who've never flown. But countries like Nigeria, population is growing exponentially, and the fleet is relatively small compared to the population. So these are different drivers we are seeing which are propelling this growth.
So let's just talk about, and I doubt it was covered in the report, but I'm sure you can steer me in terms of the report. So those numbers, those projected numbers, and then obviously aligning the right plane for the right route, for the right passenger demand. And you've given the timeline, I think, in the next 5 years. How does that then translate to expected passenger numbers and putting in an order for a new plane? That timeline?
Yeah, so I mean, what we're seeing in Africa is airlines go both for new aircraft and also pre-owned. So these are two very different markets. We recently announced an order for 10 E195-E2s from Airlink, but we're also seeing a lot of airlines going for pre-owned aircraft. These are usually quicker to be delivered. They also have lower acquisition costs. So I think both in the new and the pre-owned market, there's a lot of activity, and this demand for our segment, the small narrow bodies and up to 150-seater segment, is driven because of this need for connectivity, but also replacement of older aircraft. Also, a lot of right sizing. Load factors in Africa still have room to be optimized and be aligned with industry or global averages. So a lot of airlines are moving from bigger planes like 737s, 320s to smaller planes, which optimize the load factors and therefore profitability.
Yeah, so I think you mentioned the key word, which is right sizing, and that is something that operators need to look at to be more efficient. Certainly, when I hear from IATA that they're in Africa, we're only making like $1 profit per seat. So that right sizing is important. Your view going forward, just a closing remark?
I think in general, I mean, what I see coming to all these conferences on the continent is that the people here are excited about aviation. There's a big drive to change things. There are obviously challenges, but I think it's important also to acknowledge all the great things which are being done on the continent. I mean, we have airlines which are embracing new technology from the beginning. Also, all the digital and digitalization is amazing in Africa. So I think also with this young population here at the conference, so many students and young people coming to the Embraer stand asking about Embraer, how to enter this industry, what should they study. I can really feel this excitement, and I think it's a very promising region, and we're really excited to be part of the story on the continent.